All right, thank you. Oops. Okie dokie. This is what we're going to cover today. Um, the background, what we need to do is prep work, who does what's involved, like what are the pieces and parts of the budget, um, the tracking, and then a wrap up. I do want to share that Mike McDonald from the Northeast Kansas Library System and Sandy Wilkerson from North Central, we did a presentation called Money Matters at KLA, and we have recorded that. And Robin at Northeast is editing it so that it can become a course. So we do have that will be coming up soon. I like to start with why, Simon Sinek. So a budget is a financial expression of the library's plan and objectives. So ideally, a well-developed budget is based on your current and future needs. And I mean, by needs, I mean your community's needs, and the library's vision, mission, and strategic plan. Current and future needs, that's your nuts and bolts, salaries, books, technology, the building. And then for the plan, things that are coming from the strategic plan are dreams, vision, initiatives, new initiatives, things that are created again with input from the community and a vision for the future. As an example, expanded hours or a building project, or I'm looking and seeing we've had three building projects, and we've had some expanded outdoor space, any kind of new initiatives. Those are going to be in your strategic plan. Now, you guys are lucky, I would say, because districts have direct taxing authority. You are a special district, just like SEK is, and you are able to levy taxes directly to the citizens. That also means that you're directly responsible for raising or lowering property taxes. So you may hear about that from people in your community. You are also on your own. So you are working and having a library, your library system that doesn't have a city and a city's budget and a city's staff to fall back on. So that is something to always keep in mind. The district board, and this is a quote from the law, shall constitute a body, corporate and politic, possessing the usual powers of a corporation for public purposes. So it's a responsibility of your board to provide adequate funding. So why is a budget important? As a district, first, it's the law. You got to have it. Well, you can't get any tax money if you don't have a published budget. It ensures effective and stable library funding, and it's a tool to drive improvement and to address, again, the needs of the community. You're going to hear me say the needs of the community a lot in this presentation, because that's what we're here for. We are here to respond to the needs of the people that are paying those taxes. All right. It also, having a budget, ensures transparency and accountability, because we are the keepers of those public funds and the public trust. This is why we have to pay to have our budget published at the Municipal Services website, so anybody can find it and look at it. So the prep work, what kind of prep work goes in? What do you need to do before you actually start putting numbers down on a piece of paper? You want to scan your environment. You want to see what changes are on the horizon. See, my picture shows a horizon. I recommend doing peer library comparisons. So find other libraries that are in communities, not the size of your city, but of your, taxing district, of your library district, and see how you compare. Do you have comparable hours, staff, services, programs, those kinds of things? You can do point by point comparisons. And you can use the public library report, Alice's report that you have to do every year, to get that information, and we can help you with that. Amy can help you with that. Um, Digging into data is fun for some of us. And also, before the budget and looking at everything else that's going on in your community is when you can look at salaries. Look at the salaries of the city, of major employers in your community, of the school district, and find out where your staff and staffing fits are you out of sync with how other both nonprofits and for-profits in your community are paying their employees? Because you're an employer. So, and then look at community demographics. So is your community aging? Is your community, do you have an influx of young families? Do you have a lot more teenagers than you've had in the past? Looking at demographic data, that helps with your collection development as well. It helps with your programs, but it also helps with your budget. So you can then adjust your plans accordingly based on who's living in your community. And yeah, so if you have a community that is predominantly senior citizens, maybe you need to spend less on DVDs and more on large print. That's just a thought. You're also going to review your strategic plan as part of preparation. Pull it out. You should be pulling it out and looking at it periodically anyway, but as you're getting ready to start the budget, especially, pull it out, look through it. What had you and the board decided you were going to work on in year 1, year 2, year 3, whichever year of the plan you're at? So identify those initiatives and then determine how much money it's going to cost to make that come true. So for example, if in 2027, that's when you had talked about investigating Saturday hours or expanding your Saturday hours, how would that decision, that change impact salaries, benefits, utility costs? Programs, and we're going to have story times on Saturdays because that's when working families can come. And so there's going to be some programming costs as well. And then after you know what your plans are and where you fit in and maybe what areas you want to focus on, gather numbers, get real data about how much that's going to cost. So you can get quotes, you can get cost estimates, you can go out and look and see what the cost of living increase rate is going to be, and then how will that impact what your salaries are. Right now, the cost of living increase is 2.8%. So can you give a 2.8% raise, or can you only give a 2%, or are you in a position where you can give a 3%? Look at your insurance premium rates and don't be like Sharon and under budget for insurance rates. So I had budgeted for a 6% increase and they came in at 12. So for this year, I under budgeted for SEK's insurance, and I've had to make adjustments because I didn't have good numbers. And that's on me. So don't be like me. Plan for internal changes. Do you have any retirements coming up? Are there some subscriptions that need to be renewed? Do you have equipment upgrades that need to happen? Tech replacements? It's time for a new roof. Big things like that. And with the board, this is when you can evaluate your programs and services. Is there something that you've always been doing that maybe can twilight, or is there something new that you want to start? And then also consider getting quotes for that roof for HVAC, those big ticket items. Lou, we need to turn on the closed captioning. Amy, can you do that for us? I'm sorry, I should have done that at the beginning.
I will take a look.
Okay, sorry about that.
Sharon, it's okay. I have you connected to my hearing aids, so
you're okay?
Yep, I'm good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Before you start the budget is when you identify the goals for the library, and then you determine the money that you need for them. As my dad would say, don't let the cart drive the horse. Or you budget to a plan, don't plan to a budget, which is what Laura used to always say. All right, so you may recognize these people, or you may not if you've been down to Frontenac. Each community is an ecosystem. So this is just know where you fit in, know what else is going on in your community. And then in 2021, Representative Ken Collins, he reminded me that he's the one who removed the language from the law that limited the amount of a gift that a library could get. It used to be anything over $500,000, we had to get permission to receive that. So he struck that law from the books because Frontenac received $4.6 million from this couple who didn't live in the community anymore and nobody knew who they were. This is Richard and Jeanette Tavelis, and she was a librarian. And when they passed, they gave that money to the city, and all it said was for the construction of a library. So it could happen. You too could have a windfall. And what would you do if you had that? So that's why I include this quote. A good library is always fiscally hungry. The library's goals should always exceed the capabilities of the library budget. If a gift or windfall becomes available, the director and the library board should know how the library needs to spend it. So in that quote, it talks about the roles of both the director and the board. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. The library district, you are a taxing authority. You are the same as a city, as a school district, as me. So the board has the authority to levy the amount of taxes needed to run the library. You do not have any home rule restrictions. Your published budget will match more closely your internal budget. That's different from a city library. Your budgets, when you guys do your allocation, you sending me your published budget, and that's fine. That's all we need. That's what's running the library. Hopefully you all know that from the state municipal services page, you are going to look for the Excel workbook that is for special district libraries. You need the one that says libraries because it includes the state aid library grant worksheet, which is important. And this is a change from last year. I want you guys to either on your own or with, is it Joyce? Is that the name of the person that's helping you guys with your budget workbooks?
That was last year, but we also have a new county clerk. So I'm not sure who is going to be helping this year either.
Okay. Up in the air. All right.
Oh yeah.
That's you guys. Have you guys talked about it internally, or have you reached out to your city county clerk?
I have not. I don't know about anybody else.
Last year was kind of a mess, I would say, with the
Agreed.
budget process. I didn't even
Well,
get the Excel workbook. Did anybody else get it in the Excel format?
No, last year was terrible.
And I had to, new county clerk had to ask me for the paper copies I had of some of it because they didn't have it.
oh, that would explain because I went to the municipal services website and normally everybody's, all of the budgets for that county are uploaded to that website. There is nothing for Lynn County on the website.
It was a hot mess.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty difficult. I'm almost tempted this year to go to Chris and be like, "Hey, work with me on how to get this workbook done," because I know they do their own.
Okay.
Because I don't know who's gonna
Who do we
help.
get the workbook from, though?
So the workbook is from the municipal services website. They have not uploaded the 2027 workbooks yet.
Right.
Okay. Do you want me to show you real quick? Because that's this, the image that's right here where it says special district / library, that's from the municipal services website, but this is the 2026. So that's this year's.
Yeah,
Well,
can you
they-
show us
Yeah.
how to get it?
Okay. Let me.
Yeah, they also host if your library is willing to pay, they host a 6-hour workshop.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily district library specific. It's
It's for
somewhat
city.
helpful, but when you get home and you're looking through it, you're like, okay, wait, it's there's just so much. But they are going to have a webinar that's free coming up in May, so I'm going to tune in again. I'm hoping a second year I'll get further into it.
And I am going to that in person in Iola. It's May
Okay.
1st, I think.
Okay.
I like the idea of maybe seeing if we can get together with Chris, and I can be there too, and we can do a work day. Possibly.
I would love that.
Yeah. We still, though, we really need the county clerk to be involved.
That's fine. I'd rather have a better idea going into it, though, of what,
Yeah. Okay.
especially if it keeps changing hands.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. I'm trying to think. The county clerk of Leavenworth County helped me when I was at Linwood. And I wonder if she would still help, even though we're a different county. Maybe I'll reach out to Northeast and see if they have somebody that can help us as well. But
Okay, thank you.
yeah, so this is the Office of Accounts and Reports. It's the local government, municipal services. You know, it's buried, but look for Kansas Municipal Services. And then from their homepage, this page, so it's here are those workshops that Lou was just talking about. I'm going to the one on the 21st. And you have to pay for it. But they have budget resources down here. And non-budget, you don't need any of that. They have just all the information. I usually tend to look directly for, well, so here's the budget workbooks. So when this is updated, this is where you'll go. They'll be here on the left-hand side. It'll say budget workbooks. And if you want to see past budgets, it's under municipal budget and revenue neutral rate summary report. That's what we're not finding anything for Linn County. But if you go to the budget workbooks page, this will get updated, and we will want to scroll down to not county, not city, not rec, but special district budget workbooks. And you can download this one and look through it and start putting in numbers kind of to see how it works, because this is a complicated workbook, but it has everything's referred and everything, so it does tests and whatnot. But you can download that and play with it if you want. So that's there. Back to slideshow. Okay. So, but what I wanted to show you is that the budget, that workbook, when I downloaded it, it's for me. It's for a library system. And so under this is the certificate page, this yellow box. It's a section of the certificate that goes into the newspaper. And the law, the KSA is a Kansas statute. The law that allows district libraries to levy funds is 12-1237. So I highly recommend that you update that number, because by default it comes in at 75-2551, and that's the law. That's just referencing systems rather than district libraries. So that's a recommendation that I make. You do have to have a capital improvement budget, and that's a little bit different, because by publishing your budget, you're getting permission to spend money, and you have to have your spending authority is important, and you have to have in your budget that you have capital expenses that you think you're going to have, so that you have the permission and you don't get in trouble for spending money that you hadn't told the taxpayers that you were going to spend. So who does what? The board is big picture, so they do your strategic planning, determine the mission and the goals and the objectives of the library. They're the ones sort of steering the ship, see where you want to go. They're the ones that are responsible for representing the community. So the needs of the community are, they're the citizens that are elected to represent everybody, to represent their neighbors. They approve the budget. They have input on its preparation. The board is who will defend the budget. So when you have your budget hearing, that's when, they should be the ones speaking to anybody who's come to your hearing to talk. And then they oversee the budget and look at those monthly financial reports that you and the treasurer have created, or your accountant, if you have an accountant. The director is administering that strategic plan. Those are your marching orders. Provides input in its development, because again, you're the one serving everybody that's coming in the library, so you probably have a really good idea of what folks who come into the library want, and your board should have an idea of what folks that don't come into the library might need the library to provide. The director helps prepare the budget. So first draft of the budget is usually done by the director. And then you give it to the board to talk about. And if you have major funding decisions that need to be made, you bring those to the board in advance and let them debate what needs to be, if you need to raise taxes. The director administers the budget once it's approved and definitely attends the budget hearing. Actually, you attend every board meeting. And you need to understand the financial reports and be able to answer any questions about that. These are just some of the laws that govern libraries that you might need to know about. Cash basis, we can't spend money we don't have in the bank. So you can't technically spend state aid till it's been deposited in February. Passing a gap waiver, especially if you are over $275,000 budget, is very important. And if you're over $500,000 budget, so Chris, they have to do a gap waiver because they have to have an audit. And then the only time you can sock away money is through your capital improvement fund. So hopefully all of you, can you raise hands? Does everybody have a capital improvement fund that's in a separate bank account with its own checkbook and it's earning interest? And if you get, a $4.5 million gift, you have a place to put it so that it doesn't show up on your everyday budget. Awesome. Thank you. There's all you have to do, all the board has to do is pass a resolution and they can start a capital improvement fund. And we can help you with that if needed. And you can put away up to 10% of tax funds into that capital improvement fund. And like I said, 100% of non-tax funds. It is meant for major projects. The funds can be accumulated and carried over. It can be your reserve fund. And if necessary, the library can transfer money from the capital improvement fund back over into the general fund. So we talked earlier about transparency. If so we're looking at Jenny's lovely library. If Jenny knows she needs to get a new roof and they have the money in the capital improvement fund, yes, they could just write the check out of the capital improvement fund, but they could also, the year before, publish it in the budget that they're going to transfer, $25,000 from their capital improvement fund into their general fund. And then in their general fund budget, they have a line item that says building maintenance or building repairs. And it shows a transfer in of $20,000 or up here, the income will show the transfer in, and that will you'll balance it. So you are publishing in the budget that we're taking this money out of savings and putting it into our everyday budget because we know this year we're going to spend that money on this roof. You don't have to do it that way, but it's recommended just because it's just a little bit clearer and shows that you are responsible with other people's money and you didn't get caught unaware, that you had planned for this and it's something that you knew was going to happen. And schools do this all the time. And then yes, we already talked about the spending authority. Your treasurer needs to be bonded. Hopefully everybody knows about signatures. So the treasurer writes the check, but the president and the secretary sign them. You can use stamps. You can use a facsimile signature stamp. Other positions can be on the signature card. The bank doesn't care. The bank doesn't care who signs the checks, but Kansas statute says that it needs to be the chair and the secretary that are signing the checks. And then just a reminder to always pay your taxes. So Social Security tax, income tax, unemployment tax. If you have capers, health and health insurance, make sure those are all on the up and up. Okay, any questions so far before we dig into what to include in the actual budget? Okay. Awesome sauce. We are going to start the process with looking at your internal budget and your plans, and then we're going to try to figure out what your starting balance is at the beginning of the year. So that's what cash forward is. Then we'll look at expenditures. What non-tax revenues are you going to be providing? What's your system allocation and your state aid? And then what's left over is how much tax money you need. Again, going through this whole process with your board, they're aware and you're aware of how you plan to spend the money the next year. So this can be seen as pre-approval, so that you can administer the library and spend funds in a way that is simplified and just a little bit easier to do. You can have a special fund account and that's even separate from your capital improvement fund. That if you have grant money that comes in, keeping that money separate is fine. If you have CDs, you can have CDs, and if you have major gifts. So in Iola, for example, we have a money market that is just the Marion Wilson account. So we've got this big gift and we didn't know quite what to do with it. We received it right when Roger left and I started. So we just put it in its own account. It's a special fund. It doesn't have to show up in our budget. And we decided to keep it separate. So you have that as an option as well. All right. Budget building blocks. This is your internal budget. This is a sample. And I don't know how many of you have a separate internal budget. I'm guessing several of you do. That lets you look year to year. So the Iola budget that I have goes from 2017 up to 2026. So I have 10 years of data that I can compare, and I can run averages, and I can kind of see how we have grown, which areas have gone down. I find this to be very useful, but this is your internal budget, and it's just you have a starting balance, you show all your income, you have all of your expenses, and then that starting balance plus income minus expenses equals your carryover that you're going to start the next year with. And there's a sample Google spreadsheet if you want to use it. This is a budget that you would use to complete or to, you would take to that meeting with whoever's going to be helping us put your budget together. This is the information that you would bring to that meeting. The income includes things like your SEKLS grant fees, copies, and those are usually averages. Any endowment contributions if you happen to have that. And then our grants. Does not include special funds. For expenses, this is a line item budget. So how you group your expenditures is unique to you and to your library. This is just an example. Things, materials, building maintenance, the courier cost. We tend to ask you to keep the courier separate because there's a grant that offsets that. Your salaries and employee benefits, what's your insurance going to be? Think of those things that are kind of big ticket items or things that grow every year, utilities, programming. Have all of that in your internal budget. Your internal budget can include different funds. So if you're a larger library and you have a general fund and an employee benefit fund, both of those could be in here. And you can be working on this part right now. So for Iola, Laura and I are going to start. We have almost 4 months of data now of what we've actually spent in 2026. So I can start determining what my year to date is so far for 2026, what we think we're going to spend by the end of the year. So I have a guess at what the carryover is going to be, and then I can start working on the next year's budget. All right, so we already went to the municipal services website. The 2027 workbooks are not ready, but they will be. Either working with your county or we'll work with Chris. We'll figure out a way to get this done so we can go through and you guys can have the support that you need in the absence of David. Okay, the training we already talked about. If you had capital improvement expenditures for 2025, so you will need to know exactly how much you spent on capital improvements last year to fill out this budget worksheet. Just so you know that. You will also need to know what you actually received and what you actually spent. So if you have a December financial report that is your treasurer's report, or if you've been audited and you have your audit report, you can use that data from your year-end data from the prior year to fill in your, right here, prior year actuals. That means what you actually received and spent. The current year in this budget workbook is all just what you think you're going to spend this year at the end of this year, and then the budget. And the budget is not binding. Yep. Okay. Cash flow, this is where we're going to start. The movement of money into and out of your bank accounts, the cash on hand. Why is this important? Because you don't get money from the county every month, but you have expenses every month. So you need to know when you're going to get the bulk of your money and then plan accordingly. I like to say you feel flush in March, but maybe you feel kind of poor in November. So you need to know when money is coming into your account. This can get you in trouble if you don't pay attention to it, like I did when I was in Tonganoxie and a new director. This is your cash on hand. And it really doesn't matter what your budget says. If you don't have money in the bank, that's a problem. So these are the dates when you should be receiving money from the clerk. You have a new clerk. You have an opportunity to keep an eye on said person and on or before January 20th, did you get money? On or before March 20th, did you get money? I'm asking, did you guys get your checks? You haven't had any issues with not getting your tax distributions?
We got our two.
Okay, awesome. I had a library that didn't. And they're like, I don't know what's going on. It's like, you need to call and talk to your county clerk. And it's like, oh, and it wasn't the county, it was the city. The city had forgotten to give them their distribution. And as you know, you probably already have 75, 80% of your tax income with just those two distributions. You may or may not get money in December. If you do, it's probably motor vehicle tax. Okay, and check with the county. Carryover. Cash flow is also associated with carryover, and carryover is how much money you have in the bank at the beginning of the year and how much are you going to need between the end of December and say January 23rd, because if January 20th is on a Friday and you don't get the money until that Monday, can you pay bills? Can you pay salaries? Do you have enough money in the bank to carry you over? And for my city libraries, if they don't get that January 20th distribution, they better have enough money and carryover to keep them for about 6 weeks. You guys, you're getting it direct from the horse. You don't have to fight with your city or with a municipality to get that money. So you probably don't need to have quite so much carryover, but it's reserves. And I think it's important for you and your board to talk about how much carryover you want to have. How much cushion do you want to have? It does impact the budget. The higher the carryover at the beginning of the year, when you're developing your budget, you can raise fewer taxes. So it's also a way to manage property taxes. Also be aware of when allocation comes from us, when state aid comes from the state. Those will also impact your cash flow. I think I already covered all of this. So, cash forward. If it's December and you had a vacancy or you thought you were gonna buy something that you didn't buy and you have a lot more carryover than you think you should have, you can do that capital improvement transfer in December, up to 10%, or you can make some last minute purchases at the end of the year to spend down the carryover. I've had that where I'm looking at the budget, it's November, and I'm like, why do I still have so much of my book budget? Oh, because I was so busy in the summer, I forgot to buy books. So doing some last minute purchasing at the end of the year is pretty normal. I think we've talked about all of this. So yes, district libraries need to have reserve funds, but that's more your capital improvement fund. What I'm showing here, I think this is from you, Jenny. The workbook will create, mathematically will create the starting balance and then the unencumbered balance for 2025 and whatever the proposed carryover is for 2026. That's why you need your actual 2025 numbers when you're developing your budget, because it will trigger or automatically populate the unencumbered cash balance for January 1st. Now, hopefully that matches your bank statement. That's the goal. And if it doesn't, it could be because you had checks outstanding or something like that. And we talked about using capital improvement to reduce the amount of carryover or to let carryover grow. Okay. Now we're ready for expenditures. I feel like a broken record. You need, whoops. Go back. Back. There we go. Haha. Figured it out and then click on that. Okay. So prior year actuals, current year estimates, proposed budget. You guys are going to just increase those. So prior year 2025 actuals, current year 2026 estimates, proposed budget 2027. The actuals need to be exact, true, and as close to real numbers, not estimates. Notice that the prior year actuals are all like weird, 3,428, but the current year estimate is just rounded to 5,000, and the proposed budget is a reduction, but rounded to 2,500. That's perfectly okay. I will be right back. My computer just yelled at me that it says it needs to be plugged in. So just a second. It is plugged in. It just can't tell. Maybe I need new technology. It's fun. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. For the current year, actuals are done. That's in the past. You've already spent that money. For the current year, I talked about you should have your bills almost through the end of April. So that's January, February, March. So you have 4 months of actual expenditures. If you take that 4 months for some of these, so like utilities where you pay the same amount every month, you take that, how much have we spent by the end of April, divide it by 4, you get a monthly average, and then multiply it by 12. That's one way to do an estimate. That's important if it's been a warm winter and a cool summer, and your utility bills are going to be going down. Then you can budget accordingly. If there were any unexpected expenses for the current year, include those. You want the current year estimates to be sort of accurate, as accurate as you can. You're not going to get in trouble if they're not perfect at the end of the year. So the next year, so the proposed budget, these are all just guesses. You do want them to be based on real things. So if you know that you want to buy additional books and you know that the cost of books has gone up, or you know that your insurance premiums have gone up by 12%, those kinds of known increases need to be put in the budget so that you don't get, you don't have a gotcha when it comes next year and you start actually paying your insurance premiums and went, why am I running out of money? Well, because I didn't budget correctly. It is a guide, and you always, because you're districts, you want to estimate your expenditures on the high side, and you want to estimate your income on the low side, so that you don't get caught. And you may want to have a miscellaneous, or you may want to have a strategic initiatives budget line that you put some money in as a cushion. And there's nothing wrong with that. So your spending authority, remember we talked about how you have to have permission to spend up to a certain amount of money. That spending authority for the budget we see on this page is $139,549. It is the total of your expenditures. So that's why you can't legally spend of tax money more than $139,549, well, or of what your income is. All right. So it's important to pay attention to your spending authority and make sure that you're not going, oh, guess what? We decided we're going to just, buy this big ticket item and we didn't put it in the budget. Don't do that. It might get you in trouble. So that's why spending authority also includes your capital improvement fund. So think about it. I mean, this is a plan. So think about what you have happening next year. And I know next year is many, many months away. And so we have to, there's a little bit of, crystal ball action that we have to do and think of contingencies. And this is why it's so important to have a strategic plan, because that helps guide you. So then you and your board know what you had talked about doing for next year. Budget high, and you also might want to consider adding a delinquency rate. Again, that's a bump to the amount of tax money that you bring in, assuming that some citizens are not going to be able to pay their taxes, and otherwise you would just lose that tax money. The amount of tax money that you budget for is probably never going to exactly match the amount of tax money that you get for the year because of delinquency rate. Expenditures are based on actuals, estimates, and averages. So using all three of those math techniques, you can come up with your proposed budget. I recommend starting with your personnel costs, so salaries and employee benefit costs, because those are going to be your most expensive. As you can see in the sample budget, salaries are at almost 70 and employee benefits are at 12. Those are by far the two largest expenses. And that makes sense because you don't have a library without people. Right. This is just from the state guidelines to give you and your board an idea of how your budget might be broken up. So we talked about salaries and benefits. The guideline is 65% of your salary, of your overall budget should be salaries and benefits. And then we ask that you try to get 12% of your overall budget for materials and collection development. So this is just for your information. It can be used to help guide planning. So we've looked at our expenditures and we kind of know what our carryover is going to be. So we've got some of that done. Now let's look at our non-tax revenues. So as a taxing district, you're going to put into your budget information that a city that I would tell my city libraries, don't you dare put that in your published budget. That's none of the cities. They don't need to know about that. It's not their business. That is for you and your board to manage. But you're a direct taxing district, so you do need to include some of that non-tax income that you receive from us, from petty cash, from E-rate distribution, your rebates. This library added the Kansas Notable Books, which is a grant, and some could argue don't ever put a grant in your budget. If this is a grant that you're 99% sure you're going to get, put it in your budget. I would recommend that you clearly differentiate though. So even adding petty cash, non-tax, SEKLS allocation, non-tax. So saying this show, and then if Joe Q Public pulls up your budget, they can look at this and go, oh, that's not tax money. The things above it are tax money, but anything that's in this box that's showed on the screen is not tax money. So it shows due diligence, that you are, without ever having to levy any property taxes, you're providing $27,000 of support for the library. The law allows you to not include gifts and bequests. These are special funds and can be kept separate. So, and there's the law, 792925 is the law that says you don't have to put gifts and bequests in this budget. All right. I like to use 5-year averages because sometimes you'll have a flush year and the next year you'll have a low year. So instead of just basing 2027 on what happened in 2026, look at what happened since COVID and then use a 5-year average because that's going to be a little bit more conservative, I guess is the word I want to use. We talked about state grant and aid. You just saw that as one of the non-tax income lines. State aid by law, passed in 1975, it is to provide funds which would supplement budgets of local public libraries. And the reason we needed to find the special districts libraries workbook is because it includes this. This is the worksheet that Alice uses to determine if you get state aid. It's very, very important. It's pulling information from the workbook itself for the current year and the proposed years. And you can see in this is Blue Mounds. I'm sorry, Brenda, I'm picking on you. There's 2 tests. The first is has your board determined that you're going to raise at least $1 more than you did the year before? That shows a maintenance of local financial effort. The other test is if your community's assessed valuation, if your community's property values have gone up, did your levy rate stay the same or go up? And in this case, her assessed valuation, the property values in her area went up, so they lowered their mill levy rate. But they raised an extra $7 over the year before, so that qualifies. The second test is in case you're in a community that is depreciating. So your people are moving out, you've lost industry, your assessed valuations have gone down. In that case, if it's an inverse relationship. So if the assessed valuations have gone up, your mill levy rate is going to, if assessed valuations have gone down, the mill levy rate needs to go up to raise the same amount of money to run the library. So if the first test fails, but the second test, you've increased your mill levy rate, then you still get state aid. Because it shows, again, that you've tried to maintain the same amount of money to run the library. Limitations on state aid include that it is not for construction or repair or debt reduction. And the maintenance of tax income is necessary to prevent threat to the library's eligibility for state aid, and in some systems, the system grant as well. That is true for us. If you do not qualify for state aid, if you do not get a waiver, from the state, it could jeopardize your allocation grant from us and just your allocation grant. It's not predicating on anything else. For 2027, good news, we get the $1,000 base back. So we are going to get the $1,000 base, and we're going to keep that 2% increase that we got this year. So your state aid is going to look more like 2025. So we got the $1,000 in 25. We didn't get it in 26. We're getting it again in 27. So if you see one of your representatives or senators, tell them thank you. So this is an example from a different library. You'll notice that their non-tax income looks a little different. They didn't include the notable books grant, but what we want to look at now are those other taxes. And sometimes I think people get, they go, oh, well, all of our taxes that support the library are property taxes. No, they're not. You have motor vehicle taxes, recreational taxes, watercraft. The legislation has tried to remove some of these taxes. I don't think that they have succeeded. But the budget will include these averages. And as part of you filling out this workbook, you're going to get this information from the county, and you're going to have to type in these numbers that fill this part of the workbook. That's where, you remember where I said we need to make sure that we'll fill out one and we need to send it to the county clerk and go, is this all right? Do we have these numbers in the right place? That's helpful. As a district library, a majority of your budget is covered by ad valorem taxes. So let's look at 2025. You had a carryover of about $3,500, and you had, about $10,000 of not property tax money, and you had $5, $6, $7, $8, about $9,000 of money from SEK. Well, that doesn't cover a budget. That doesn't cover the budget. So this library had to then ask the property taxpayers for $108,000. So again, a majority of your budget is paid for by property taxes. And all of this auto calculates. Again, this is a fabulous workbook. It does all the math for you. I'm going to gloss over this because there's a video that you can see. And this is just basically talking about that. If your property taxes go up, your mill levy rate will go down. If your property taxes go down, your mill levy rate will go up. The important part for this is that commercial property is taxed at a higher rate than residential. So if you have new businesses coming into your community, jump up and down. That is really, really good for the whole community. This is the timeline. So sort of when things need to happen. Now is when you're reviewing your plans, determining what's needed, doing that gap waiver. In May and June, that's when you really need to start drafting your budget, and you should be getting your tax estimates as of June 15th. By July 20th, you have to let the county know if you're going to stay revenue neutral or exceed the revenue neutral rate. That July 20th, in the workbook is an intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate worksheet that you can fill out, and you have to sign it and send it to the county clerk. And between August 20th and September 20th is when you have to have a hearing if you're going to exceed the revenue neutral rate. You need to publish your budget in the paper 10 days or more before your hearing. If you are not exceeding your revenue neutral rate, if you're going to stay revenue neutral, then you have to have your hearing, I think, by August 25th. You must, I'm going to show this on the next slide. There's a resolution that is in that workbook, ta-da, that you need to fill out and needs to be read at a board meeting. I hate these things. Whereas, now therefore be it resolved. But we have to do it. we're not the city, we're, be it resolved, the governing body of the Lynn County Library District #1 public library. It's in the law, so we have to do it. And it'll tell you as you're filling out your budget workbook, there's this is on the Library General tab. It will tell you what the revenue neutral rate is and whether or not you're going to exceed that revenue neutral rate. And if you are, is a rate hearing and a resolution required? Bright red, yes, you have to have a hearing. This is from SEK's website. So the workbook itself will guide you, and it has lots of instructions as well. And here you have to do the resolution. So once the budget has been completed, you filled out your workbook, you've published everything in the paper the way you're supposed to, you've had your hearing, you've approved that budget, you're good. You're done with that for a while. So we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about living with the budget, whatever year it is, living with the budget. So you have it. You have this guide that you and the board have worked on and it's been approved, and you're starting to live with this budget, and you're getting your tax money and your other money. So every month you're tracking all that fun, right? You're tracking what's coming in, you're tracking what's going out, and you're using monthly financial reports that compare your actuals to the budget, ideally. And you're looking at those every month as part of your board meeting. You have this budget, those are their guidelines, and you spend within the budget. So you're paying attention to it's April. January. Let's do March. At the end of March, have you spent 25% of a budget line? It's June. Have you spent 60% of a budget line? It's September. Have you spent 75% of a budget line? So you can use your financial report to help you determine, are you over budget or under budget? And some budget lines, it's, you got your insurance bill, you paid it, you're done. So it's 100% spent. By having a financial report, you can adjust. You can go, ooh, I'm overspending in this line. I'm buying too many supplies. I need to dial that back. Or, we're like I said, if you have a vacancy, you're probably going to be underspending your salary budget. And then towards the fall is when you can look and evaluate and prepare for the next year. What you do in 2026, you can use that come November to go back to your 2027 budget and adjust it. You can't adjust the total income or the total expenses, but you can create a working budget and tweak lines a little bit and adjust some expenses based on what's actually happened. Because it's the spring of the year prior that we're working on this budget. Things change, life happens. So this fall, review what was passed, determine what still works, determine what transfers need to be made. Is there something where you're overspending or underspending, and do you need to adjust that, or do you just need to be aware of it? And you can put those adjustments into a working budget. That for IOLA, we take that working budget to the board and they review it and approve it. It doesn't change anything that we published, because we're not messing with the bottom line. We're just messing with, the line items. But sometimes it can be more realistic and help us, actually track funding and spending throughout the year. All right, financial reports. This is just an example of one. Again, it's an accountability tool. You put it in your board packet. Everybody is seeing it. They can read it and hopefully understand what's happening and what you spent and received for the month, how much you've spent or received for the year to date, how that compares to the budget. And this is where I was talking about, it's June, are you at 50%? And it also helps the board do their job. They can look at this report and go, can you help me understand what this number means? Or is this a trend? And you can say, no, we just had this one time weird purchase that we had to make. Is it unexpected or is this expected? It lets them evaluate you as the director on how well you are being the financial administrator for the organization. You can change, this example shows a percentage. If you're more comfortable with how much money is left to spend, you can change that. And the sample Google Sheet has both versions if you're interested. I do recommend that you have a fiscal policy that shows how and when the director might need to bring a request to the board for an unusual expenditure, an expense that is not to some vendor that you normally use, or if it's an expense that's outside the budget. Having that guidance in your policy, in a fiscal policy, is highly recommended. And again, we can help you with that. Lawrence Public has a really good financial policy that I steal from all the time. Quickly just mention, there are requirements in the state law about if you, in this law, you are considered your own taxing district, so you are the same as a municipality. If you have a budget less than $275,000, you do not have to have any kind of review, but we still recommend an independent review periodically to protect you and to protect the library. If you have between $275,000 and $500,000, you have to have either an audit or agreed upon procedures. And Lacine has to have an audit because they have a budget that's over $500,000. So this is a third-party review of your finances. It makes sure that you have receipts for all the bills that are paid. You need to have that anyway. These are internal controls that you should have.
You have recommendation of somebody to do an independent review?
If you have a CPA in your community or a regular auditor can do a less expensive review. We can help do a review. And again, it's one of those things where we'll say, we see you had some of these expenses. Can you pull the receipts and the check for this, 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 and this? It's like a spot check of what you've spent. The other thing an auditor does, and if you have it in your budget, every 5 years do an audit, or every 3 years do an audit. Put it in your budget so that you can have this report to show we're doing everything right. Or if something needs to be fixed, it can be fixed. Jared Gilmore and Phillips do a lot of the audits. There's Agler Gattert out of Ottawa is who does the SEK audit. Harold did our audit in Tonganoxie as well. And they'll help you with those internal controls as well. And then they'll look at all your bank statements. That's the biggest thing, is make sure that your bank statements match your financial records. Does the yearly internal board audit count? Tell me more about that, Lou. What's involved?
So every year, our board, before the annual meeting, we choose 3 non-officers, and they get all my files for the year, for the previous year. And they'll maybe just choose, 5 or 6 months and go through, and because on there I have all the bank statements, all the receipts, and they will go through to make sure that it is accurate.
That's awesome. Yeah. So
Okay.
you have less than 275,000 in your budget, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that is an independent review by them, and that is an excellent best practice and one that protects them and protects you. So have they always done that? Did they do that with Wendy?
I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, I just
But-
wonder because sometimes when you have a change of leadership, that's a good time to have a third party come and look at your books.
Well, and that's kind of where we ran into the issues when I came in and I was like, huh. But since I've taken over, it's been nothing. So they've
Well,
done
and
it a
that
few more times.
it's a CYA. I mean, it covers you, and
Yeah.
it covers them. And
Mhm.
if you've had any kind of, okay, so you guys may or may not know, when I was in Tonganoxie, I took over, and the former director had used the credit card irregularly, let's say. And there was legal matters. So the reputation of the library had been dinged really, really hard in the community. So we did have to have a third party review and audit to help rebolster our reputation in the community. And we were even more transparent than we had been in the past and put in some additional checks and balances. Like here in Iola, the treasurer comes and looks at our our credit card statement because that's the easiest way to make some mistakes. And you can do it by accident. It's like, oh, I ordered this thing. Oh, I forgot I used Amazon and I didn't switch the account. Sometimes it can be innocent, but sometimes it's not. So anything that you can do to protect the reputation of the library and you, again, that public trust. You're using other people's tax money. So whatever we can do to make sure that we are being mindful and careful with those funds is beneficial in the long run to everybody involved. Some other internal controls that I want to mention, the person who opens the bills, if that can be not the director. I know in little libraries, it's all the same person. Working with your treasurer to have the treasurer review the bank statements, just so it's a second set of eyes. If you have, maybe you create the deposit and you give it to the treasurer to take to the bank so that it's, again, a check and a balance. But again, that's your financial reports help with that as well. And guess what? We're almost done. Budgeting in brief, we're a public library. We have public funds and public trust. So this is why why we have a strategic plan, and the budget is the fiscal plan that ties up with that strategic plan. We talked about who the roles and responsibilities for everybody involved. Talked a little bit about the nuts and bolts of building the budget and why we do things in the sequence that we do. We discussed living with that budget month to month with having a meaningful financial report, and the value of an audit if you can afford it or if you can put it in the budget. You guys set your own budget. So if you need to, every 3 years increase what you ask for because it's going to be used for an audit, then that's showing good fiscal responsibility. And you can do that. You don't have a city with a home rule charter ordinance going, no, you can't spend any more money. You're not in that situation. But at the same time, you are directly responsible to the taxpayers. So you need to be extra aware of the financial health of your community and of your library district. And then, yep, your public library receiving and spending public funds in a way that promotes public trust. And there is a link here for budget resources that I've been building over several years, and it was updated for 2026. So you are able to get that and, build a foundation that's as strong as this Roman wall in York, England. There we go. All right, I'm going to escape and stop share and answer questions, or if you need to leave, it's 11:11. That went faster than I thought. Was it helpful? No, sorry. I'll do better. No, we'll send out an evaluation. And I very much would like your feedback on this. But I like the idea of doing an actual in-person workday. I wonder if we can find, if not Joyce, who is the name, who you guys said a name of somebody, was it like a former city clerk? Who might be able to help us?
Well, you mentioned someone in Leavenworth.
Yeah, but you guys said another name before that.
Joyce was the one who helped last year. Joyce Wilson.
Okay.
And then Danielle Davy is no longer our county clerk. So I forget the name of the new one.
Well, we paid Joyce a good amount of money too. She didn't just
Not the $30?
No, hell no. We paid her like 150.
Well,
So,
that's a lot. Okay.
She
Yeah,
used
and
my wrong year numbers.
yeah, she wasn't the best, but
Okay.
we didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
I don't want to pay 150 again.
No, and the first year it's intimidating. But it can be done as long as we get the data that we need from the county. We can do it, especially if we do it together. And I like Chris, that we had talked about
Oh,
involving
yes.
Chris
Sorry,
too.
Chris.
And she does it on her own, or she does it with an accountant.
She said she does
I
it on her
honest-
own.
Yeah,
I
I've
thought
always
she
heard
did
she
on
does
her
it on
own.
her own. Mhm.
Okay. I will
What would be
see
the
if she's
time
willing.
frame that we would be looking at? Because summer gets so busy.
Well, so part of
Do
what
we have to wait till after June 15th?
Yeah, so it
Yeah.
really is helpful. I mean, you can have a majority of your expenditures ready. You can have your non-tax income estimates ready. You can still be working on your budget, but you're really not going to have a good idea of how much property tax you're going to need until you get those June 15th estimates. So when is your June board meeting? Is everybody, who's early in the month and who's later in the month?
I'm the second Wednesday.
Hive Library is the third Wednesday.
June 15th is
Is the
third
second Tuesday.
Kendra, so you might need to have to change your June meeting or have a special meeting, because that would be, for you, it'd be June 9th, and those estimates don't come out till June 15th.
Okay.
Or let's see, your July, see, and you could have your meeting and you could review your budget June 14th, because you have to be able to, by July 20th is that drop dead date for if you are going to exceed your revenue neutral rate. It would make me nervous to not have that meeting until the 14th in case you didn't have a quorum, and I was like, oh, what are we gonna do? So talk to your board, and see if they want to do a special meeting, or make the decision ahead of time that you're going to exceed your revenue neutral rate. Okay. Well, thank you guys for listening to me a second time for some of you, and we will, I've got my workday follow-up information to be helpful to you, since we don't want to spend $150, and but we do probably need to find out who your new clerk is. So I will investigate that.
It's
Mhm.
Cassidy Ware,
Okay, yeah.
Ware.
Okay.
And personally, I don't think she will be any more knowledgeable than the previous clerk on this matter.
Okay. Who was when Reggie was still at Mound City, I went with her and David did the workbook, but he had an assistant who was supposed to be learning how to do things.
That
What
never
happened to that
happened.
person?
She wasn't there last year at all.
Oh, so they
She left.
Yeah.
She
they don't
gave
have
her
anybody. Okay.
You know what? That's not all. I called the courthouse about a grant for teenagers to help in the summertime, and they don't even have someone to do that grant. They put aside the money, but they don't have anyone to disperse it or look at the letters.
Wow.
Which probably used to be Chastity's old job because she was the economic development coordinator. And she
Oh.
resigned from that because of issues, and now she's the county clerk.
Okay.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. It's just our town wanted to hire some young people to help us, and
Yeah.
we're just out of luck.
Okay. Do you guys ever go to the county commission meetings?
They sound horrible when I read about them in the paper.
I want to stay far away.
I have
Okay.
not, but now I'm genuinely curious.
They are not fun. They are not a good meeting.
Okay.
No, they sound bad.
Means an issue. Okay. Because the county clerk is technically the secretary or the administrator for the county commissioners. So that's why I was kind of curious. But if it's if this is a situation where you want to stay under the radar, which is what I'm hearing,
Yes.
Okay.
It sounds like there's a lot of, I mean, again, by, having not been there and just by hearsay, I've heard there's just a lot of layers of drama that happen in there. So yeah.
Okay, so then it might be beneficial because this will then demonstrate you guys know what you're doing, you are, self-sufficient, and y'all don't need to worry about us. We're good. Okay.
I'd like that for sure.
Okay. All right. I will is it Gene? I'll double check with Mike at Northeast because I know he has some district libraries and maybe I can get her to come out of retirement to work with us. That would be helpful. If Chris doesn't want to do it. Or Chris could be there as well. But we'll figure out something.
Thank you.
Okay, so hold me accountable. Sharon, don't forget, you promised. So, all right, workday. In June, so I'll have to figure out when we'll have that workday. And we could probably have the workday in early June or late May, as long as we know and we can have examples of what those estimates are going to look like and where they go, where they fit into the spreadsheet. So your homework is to go to that municipal services website, download the 2026 Special Libraries Workbook, open it, and look at it. Click through all the tabs and read through all the instructions at least once, just so it's not completely foreign to you. And then we'll figure out how to fill it out. All right. Thank you. This is recorded. So we will, it's not going to be public, but we will, it'll be an unpublished link. So we'll share the link with you directly.
We'll share the link and the link to Sharon's resource page when that's right, when the video's ready.
Yep. Okay. So thank you. Appreciate your time. And Alicia, if you want to give me a call afterwards, if you have additional questions, I don't have anything on my schedule for the rest of the day.
Thank you.
So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good day, y'all.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.